Hello everybody, today we will discuss ethics in writing. Ethics are a set of moral principles that guide us in doing right from wrong, making the correct decisions, and being honest while doing so. Whether we are sharing data, using research, or writing something, we will encounter situations that call for ethical decisions. For example, using academic and credible sources to support your work versus using popular open sources. Clearly distinguishing between your work and your source's work, not using emails or other personal communications without permission, not falsifying information, etc. Abiding by ethics is a must for all professions. Breaching ethics can result in a slippery slope where one lie or falsified detail leads to another. And in most professions, these practices are punishable by law. So, ethical behavior involves telling the truth and providing accurate information in ways that your audience comprehend the information and understand the relative importance of the information. When making ethical decisions, ask yourselves, what if your actions or non-actions become public and started trending on social media? Would it put you in trouble? Would it embarrass you? If your actions cannot stand up to the scrutiny, you might reconsider them. How an author presents information in a document can affect the reader's understanding of that information's relative weight or seriousness. For example, hiding some crucial bits of information in the middle of a long paragraph deep in a lengthy document seriously de-emphasizes the information. On the other hand, putting a minor point in a prominent spot might be a strategy to emphasize information that is not important. Both these examples could be considered unethical, as the display of information is crucial to how readers encounter and interpret it. When writers gather research for a project, they might come across conflicting data that does not support the project's goal. But as a writer, it is your ethical obligation not to suppress relevant information. Examine the topic from as many different angles as possible, conduct thorough research, and integrate information from a variety of reliable sources. Using a variety of sources helps the writer avoid potential bias that can occur from relying on only few experts. Visuals can be useful for communicating data and information effectively for a reader. However, be careful not to misrepresent or misreport the complete picture. For example, take a look at this bar graph. If this bar graph were to represent sales figures for a company, the representation on the left would look like good news, dramatically increased sales over a 5-year period. However, a closer look at the numbers show that the graph represents only a narrow range of numbers in a limited perspective, starting their origin from 9,100 and going up to only 9,800. The bar graph on the right, on the other hand, shows the complete picture by presenting numbers from 0 to 12,000. Here we see that the sales figures have in fact been relatively stable for the past 5 years. So avoid misleading your readers. Provide factual information in the most honest way possible. Do not try to distort information. Another issue you might want to look out for is your bias towards the issue. Check if your bias has influenced your piece, even if this might be in the decisions of what evidence or sources to use. Scholarly research is meant to find evidence that shows that the writer's ideas are valid and important, or to express that the ideas are partial or simply wrong. In reality, though, most writers, specifically students, tend to favor evidence that support their preconceived notions and reject evidence that challenges their ideas or beliefs. Again, avoid misleading your readers. Provide factual information in the most honest way possible. Next is documenting your sources. We will cover source documentation in depth in another lecture, but let us skim through the basics in this video. Whatever content you borrow, or in other words, anything that is not your own work, must be clearly documented both in the body of your text and in the works cited or references page. Citing a source in the reference list at the end of the piece means that you have used the source in your work. Not citing or using that source in your work is considered misleading. In other words, list only those sources in the reference list or the works cited list that you actually used and cited within the text of your piece. Documenting sources either to mislead your reader about the source or make identifying the source difficult is unethical. It would also be unethical to falsify the nature of the source, such as omitting the number of pages in the works cited entry to make a brief note seem to be a full article. Unethical source use includes suppressing information about how you have used a source, such as not clarifying that graphical information in your report was actually already a graph in your source. Credit your sources for everything you borrow. Add attribution tags and signal phrases, and also add the complete citation to the list of references at the end of the document. If you need a visual without worrying about plagiarism and cheating, use open source images. Open sources are protected under the Creative Commons license, allowing users to make fair use of the resources. To find open images, go to your Google homepage and type your keyword and click Enter. From the top menu, click Images, then click on Tools. From the drop-down menu, click on Usage Rights. Here select Creative Commons license. Now all the images you will get are from open sources and free to use. Regardless of the copyrights, you should always keep track of where you found information or graphics from, and for the assignments for your class, you will appropriately cite these sources. Just because something is open source does not mean that you can pass it off as your own work. And if you don't cite it, that is exactly what you're doing, whether or not that was your intention. Your goal is to maintain and enhance your credibility by using appropriate professional language, citing highly respected sources, providing reliable evidence, and using sound logic. Make sure as you start your research that you always question the credibility of the information you find. You should ask yourself, are the sources popular or scholarly? Are they peer-reviewed by experts in the field? Can the information be verified by other sources? Are the methods and arguments based on solid reasoning and sound evidence? Is the author identifiable, and do they have appropriate credentials? Be cautious about using sources that are not reviewed by peers or editors, or in which the information cannot be verified or seems misleading, biased, or even false. Cite all borrowed materials. Giving credit where credit is due will build your credibility and enhance your document. Be honest in presenting your ideas and the ideas of others. Do not mislead or manipulate your audience. Do not write something that can cause the readers to believe something that is not true. Be cautious when using figures, charts, and tables, making sure that they visually represent quantities with accuracy and honesty.